On a warm summer afternoon in the heart of Paris, Elena wandered through the streets of Montmartre. She had always been drawn to the city's charm. The cobblestone streets, the sound of distant violins, and the scent of fresh croissants. But today felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, as though the city itself was holding its breath. Elena had come to Paris to escape. Life back home had been suffocating. Endless workdays and a love life that seemed destined to disappoint. She yearned for something more, something that felt real. As she walked into a quaint bookstore, she noticed a man sitting by the window, his attention fixed on a weathered book. His dark hair curled slightly at the ends, and a pair of reading glasses rested on the bridge of his nose. Intrigued, Elena pretended to browse nearby, stealing glances at him. Finally, he looked up, and their eyes met. He smiled, a warm, inviting smile that made Elena feel as if she'd known him forever. Finding anything interesting, he asked in a rich, melodic voice. Caught off guard, Elena stammered, "Oh, I was just browsing." He chuckled and closed his book. "I'm Lucas," he said, extending a hand. "Elena," she replied, shaking his hand. From that moment, their connection was instant. They spent hours in the bookstore talking about their favorite books, their dreams, and their pasts. Lucas was a writer, searching for inspiration in the streets of Paris. Elena shared her own story, admitting how lost she felt and how Paris was her escape. Over the next few weeks, they became inseparable. They strolled along the Seine, danced under the Eiffel Tower at midnight, and shared secrets over glasses of wine at hidden cafes. Lucas brought out a side of Elena she hadn't seen in years, spontaneous, carefree, and full of hope. But as their bond deepened, a shadow loomed over their romance. Lucas confessed one evening, under the glow of Parisian streetlights, that he wasn't in Paris permanently. He had a life waiting for him in London, a career, responsibilities, and family. Elena's heart sank. She had finally found the connection she'd been searching for, only to realize it was fleeting. "I can't leave Paris," Elena said softly. "It's my fresh start. And I can't leave London," Lucas admitted. The days that followed were bittersweet. They made the most of every moment, knowing their time together was limited. On their last night, Lucas took Elena to a small park overlooking the city. "Promise me one thing," Lucas said, holding her close. "No matter what happens, remember this. Love doesn't vanish just because of distance. It stays with you." Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as she nodded. When Lucas boarded his train the next morning, Elena stood on the platform, her heart breaking. But as the train disappeared into the horizon, she realized something. Lucas had been right. Their love wasn't confined to a city or a moment in time. It had become a part of her, a reminder of what it meant to truly feel alive. Years later, as Elena walked through Montmartre once more, she found herself back at the same bookstore. On a whim, she stepped inside and froze. Sitting by the window, with a familiar weathered book in his hands, was Lucas. He looked up, and their eyes met again. This time, He smiled with the certainty of someone who had waited a lifetime for this moment. Finding anything interesting, he asked, just as he had years before. Elena smiled. Oh, I think I just did. Their love story wasn't over. It had simply been waiting for the right time to begin again. Elena stepped closer, her heart racing with a mix of disbelief and joy. The years had changed them both, yet Lucas's presence felt as familiar as an old melody, one she hadn't heard in years but could hum perfectly. I thought I'd never see you again, Elena said softly, her voice trembling. Lucas set the book aside and stood, his smile tinged with the same disbelief she felt. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be back here, but something kept pulling me to Paris. Maybe it was you. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the years between them hanging in the air. Finally, Lucas gestured toward the little table by the window. Sit with me? Elena nodded, and as they took their seats, the world outside seemed to blur. I came back for a book signing, Lucas began, his eyes scanning hers for any sign of doubt. My novel, it's about us. About Paris, the bookstore, everything we shared. Writing it was my way of holding on to those memories. Elena's breath caught. You wrote about us? He nodded, reaching into his bag and pulling out a copy of the book. The title, Love Beyond Time, glinted in gold letters. It's all here, Lucas said. The moments we had, the choices we made, and even the goodbye I never wanted to say. Elena ran her fingers over the cover, her heart aching with both pride and sorrow. I don't know what to say. Lucas leaned closer. Say that maybe it's not too late for us. She looked into his eyes, searching for answers to questions she hadn't dared to ask herself in years. Lucas, my life changed after you left. I stayed here, built something for myself, but a part of me always felt incomplete. And I tried to move on, Lucas confessed. I went back to London, to my old life, but nothing ever felt the same. I kept wondering, what if I had stayed? What if I had fought harder for us? Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as the emotion she had buried for so long came rushing back. Do you think we can find that connection again? After all this time? Lucas reached across the table and took her hand, his touch as warm and steady as she remembered. I don't think we ever lost it, Elena. It's been waiting for us, just like this city. They spent hours in the bookstore, catching up on the lives they had led apart. Lucas told her about his struggles with writing and the emptiness he felt in London. Elena shared stories of her journey in Paris, how she had grown, learned to stand on her own, but always carried the memory of him in her heart. As the sun set and the golden light filled the shop, Lucas finally asked the question he had been holding back. Would you give us another chance? To see where this could go without the fear of what might happen? Elena hesitated for only a moment before smiling. Yes, Lucas. I think we owe it to ourselves to find out. From that day forward, they began to rebuild what they had lost one moment at a time. They revisited the places they had loved together. The cafe by the Seine, the park with its breathtaking view of the city, and the Eiffel Tower, where they had once danced under the stars. But this time, There was no ticking clock, no looming goodbye. For the first time, their love wasn't bound by time or place. It was simply theirs. As they walked hand in hand through the streets of Paris, Elena realized something profound. Sometimes, love isn't about holding on too tightly or letting go too soon. Sometimes it's about finding your way back to the one person who makes the world feel whole again. And for Elena and Lucas, their love story was just beginning.